All right, Year of Stuff 2024, game number two. Our first game was a very solid tie from both sides against Midas. This one, we are facing the easy opponent of Delial. And man, that's a lot of A's to the right. There are certain players who would, without thinking, play 4A, 5, 9, and 4. Now, Deli may end up playing 4A, 5, 9, and 4, but if he does do it, he will have done it after a whole lot of consideration. That's a lot of very redundant cards. It makes me think you could also consider just going in one, like 4A, 5, 9, and 1. I know you're horrible going up, but you have the recaptures and they have trouble attacking it. Maybe. Maybe they just set up against it and then you're very unhappy. Yeah, probably scratch that idea. Probably not so good. It's annoying that Braska in 4 has the plus wall, so if they set up in 3, it's hard for you to block 2. But a lot of very similar cards. This is going to be a really hard random to negotiate, and I think there's a good chance Deli's just going to drop whatever he picked up in 9. 5A, 7, 5, and 9. That's a little clunky, though. That's a little clunky. Titus has such a comfortable way to land an 8. And then if you're hit by any combos, but you probably won't be. So I would not be surprised if that's where he's putting such a card. Yeah, one reason I was, when he picked up 5A75, I stopped thinking he was going to go in 1, is because if you have to recapture in 2, that card will necessarily also have an A facing right. So it is helpful to have both Kuja and 5A75. So when he picked up 5A75, I assumed he wasn't going in 1, and then he put it back down and did play 4A59 in 1, which seems like a reasonable move. Though I did think if stuff can set up against it, there's potential dangers. Now, are there good ways to set up? There's 2, 9, A6, and 3. And that's pretty complicated, because if Deli goes in 2, Braska potentially lands in 4. But I think Deli can just play in 2 and with Vincent, and it's safe to 1, so the combos aren't scary, and then you have no recapture of 3. Does he have other ways to set up there? I kind of assumed he must, but didn't really check. The answer is if he wants to set up there, otherwise he cannot do so via 3. Can he do so via 5? The answer is also no. Okay. So, I think unless you think something like 2, 9, A6, and 3 works, and I don't think it's a good move, I don't think you want to go in 3 here. Anything in 3 is just kind of easily met by Vincent in 2. And I know that makes the game upward facing, and your cards are a lot better going up, so maybe there is some play there. Maybe just anytime Luca lands in 4, the fact that it's safe towards in a downward direction is just an annoying enough card you have good play. But I think it's kind of hard to make this an up facing game. I think that's difficult. 2, 9, A6, and 2 doesn't make much sense. Maybe that actually is the better way. Maybe that's how you want to do this. 2, 9, A6, and 2. I'm not sure about this, but my point is, if it's captured by Vincent, again, you've made the game upward facing, and this time when you plus wall with Braska in 4, it combos through and flips 2 as well. So I'm trying to figure out how can we make the game upward facing while grabbing those 2 cards if they grab the in-between square. And if they don't grab the in-between square, if we can land 2, 9, A6, and 2, and they don't interact, well, then we get to go in 3 after, and we're very happy. Now, I think the reason I probably still don't like this move is I think Deli can just play 4A, 7, 8, and 4, a move he kind of wants to make anyway, and a move that does interact because it sets up 5. So perhaps a harder position than you might think given the directional weaknesses in Deli's hand. Yeah, this was a better starter than I thought it was. I'm not honing in on an obvious retort. I don't really think you want to take it, and I don't think you have great ways to interact. And that usually leads me to a far corner, but I'm not sure there's obvious far corner play either. You kind of want the game to be up-down. dropping like any card in 8. Actually, like A4, 7, 8, Luca in 8. Luca in 8. This is not like this is kind of a defensive side in a way I tend not to find that appealing. But Luca in 8 says kind of useful things. It says we pair 7 and 9 in a way that's useful to me. We make the game up down in a way that is very useful to me. Sure, Laguna doesn't want to see that, but other things do. All right, he goes for the capture. So here you have to be planning against a move in 2. You have created the 7 square for Laguna, and you have created the 3 square for other cards. But you're potentially giving up a lot of ground for those moves. So say Deli plays 5A7, 5 and 2. I haven't calculated out differences between Kuja and 5A7, 5, but Kuja is on average the better card, and it seems like it should just be the better card here. The 5 getting same walled by Titus is kind of annoying. Now, sure, the 6 maybe in some variations gets picked off by Braska's 9-5, but I have to assume that's going to be less. So let's say 5A7, 5 and 2. Now you need a very good move, and I would not be very comfortable making this move in 4 unless I had a plan against 2. Like, if the reasoning is kind of, I don't think I can interact any other way with the starter, and so I'm just kind of taking interactions with it off the board by forcing the capture and recapture immediately. I don't know. Or even like I'm making it go up left. Now, face theory, watch my video on face theory, says like, yeah, when in doubt, just capture. This is actually the best value you can get out of a difficult starter like this. And maybe that is enough justification, but I really think you need a planned move against 2. You need to have, okay, against 2, I know I can go in 3, and I think that's reasonable for me. Now, I don't think 3 is. So, okay, not 3, say. Because the thing about any move in 3, like with an A down, is Deli goes in 5, he doesn't need to recapture 2, because 2 wasn't taken. That lets him flip 4, which is a hard card for him to take. Deli really wants to go in 5, right? Because he doesn't have 7. And it sets him up with a threat in 6 as long as Kuja is still in his hand. So your plan's not 3, right? Now your plan could be 7, Laguna in 7. Then you have a whole bunch of power facing away from the action, and Deli still gets to land a card in 5. Which makes me start to think, is the plan to go in 5, right? That's a square that's good for Deli and not as good for you. And that requires some specifics. On the other hand, like, I think this was a hard spot for stuff. I'm not sure what he should have done. I think the move I was happiest I came up with was Luca in 8, but I didn't get to it because a move happened. But I was thinking 4 might be an annoying reaction. Often 8, one appealing thing about 8 is if they go 4, you go 7. But I thought specifically Vincent in 4 was kind of annoying. Alright, Deli does it with Kuja rather than 5A7, 5. I'm just going to assume he worked out something specific. My instinct would be the other way, but instinct isn't worth that much here because the difference between 5 and 6 is just very marginal. Like, what numbers is 5 taking that 6 isn't? Look at, like, every card on the board, right? The only thing the 6 might take the 5 wouldn't is that 5 to the right on Titus, and there's a good chance for a same wall there. So, like, this is very marginal differences. Is the 6-7 part going to pick up 9s? There are no 9s to pick up. Is the 5-7 part going to pick up 8s facing up? There's no 8s to pick up, right? So difference is incredibly marginal, or incredibly not marginal, but specific, right? It's not, the general strength doesn't actually make any difference, and it is the specific powers here. And yeah, the 5 both has more combo potential aggressively and is more comboable defensively, and Deli his last turn. This makes sense. And I think Stuff has a tough situation now. Because Deli wants to land 5, but you don't have something to put in 5 that really hinders that. Do you have anything fun to do in 6 or 8? Preferably 6? Hmm. This looks really tough to me. This looks like the kind of game that everything is going to be close to losing, and there is probably something that doesn't lose, but it is really hard to identify because, like, as soon as you start calculating, you go, for instance, Titus in 3. Okay, they play X Death in 5. What do I do next? And there may well be a tie there, right? But it's really easy to look at that position and be like, no, and move on to the next plausible move. And the next plausible move, something's going to look ugly, and there's a lot of plausible squares you could go in. And I think what you often have to do is just force yourself to keep calculating one. So, like, say Titus in 3, X Death in 5. You're down 6-4. Do you have something? I think there the answer is just pretty clearly no. But I should be checking. I should be checking. The question is, do you have to block 6, or could you play like Braska in 7? And if you can play Braska in 7 and they take in 8, you have 8 covered with Laguna. So they probably play 6, and then Vincent sweeps you. Or sweeps you sufficiently. Yeah, I don't think that works. 7 looks really tough. Laguna and Titus in 6 at least sets up some threat in 3, but 3 is just blocked, and then. But is 3 so comfortable to block? Let's say Titus 6. Titus 6 creates a real threat in 3, and if you get to go in 3, then you've taken 2 forever. So the main line is going to be they block 3. And then you play, and they kind of have to block 3 with Vincent because you have a combo in 5. And so then you play Braska in 5, and you are up 6-4, and they have no ups, so your cards in 4 and 6 are safe. I think Titus 6 might be the answer. He's picked up a card. It is Laguna. I thought that was most likely to be headed for 7. Now, it could very easily turn out that Titus 6 just loses horribly to some obvious move I missed or to some unobvious move. But when you're low on time and you see something with kind of any hope at all, I think you have to play it. So in that spot, I would have played Titus 6. Now this seems like Deli can play 5. He has to be very careful of setups in 9, but if there isn't a setup in 9, it's pretty comfortable. My instinct is X Death. You kind of want to keep Vincent to put the Fear of God in 9s facing to the right, but I guess X Death does that as well. So actually, maybe you could just use 5A7-5. Is there any setup in 9? There is Titus. Titus in 9. Okay. So maybe stuff is noticing that Titus diagonal from an A7 is very powerful, as we potentially suggested last time with playing 6 last turn. But it could also meet a move in 5, right? It could also meet a move in 5. Now, I'm worried about this. I think a very plausible continuation, I think this is a cool line, so bear with me, is X Death 5, or say 5A7, no, say X Death 5. X Death, we need it to be X Death. X Death 5, Titus 9. Sets up pluses both ways, right? Vincent 8. Vincent 8. Now stuff must combo with 2-9-A6, but 5A7-5 combos it all back in 3. Because when 2-9-A6 combos 5 and 9, X Death in 5 flips 4, which flips 1, which flips 2, which means when you combo back in 3, you flip the whole chain again. So I think Deli can go in 5 because I think 9 is not dangerous. And if 9's not dangerous, I don't know what would be. Um, you know, if you're gonna go 8, then you just are down 6-4 with no captures on board. Or if you go 8 with Braska, it's 5-5, but you lose to Vincent 9. If you go 6, you lose to 3, as long as they hold Vincent up. If you go 3, they go 6, and again hold Vincent up for the last move. And 9, I don't think works. But let's say stuff was lost. Let's say there was no tie. My current guess is Titus 6 tied, but let's say there was no tie. This move could be the optimal move against a good player, right? Against a weaker player, they will make the move in 5. However, a very good player will notice there is a reply in 9, and they might not calculate it out, or I may have just calculated it wrongly and they calculate it better. And so it is possible not to play X Death in 5. Like, it's in some ways easier the weaker a player you are to play X Death in 5 because you don't check 9. You don't see they have this big setup in 9. And you have to see it combos through. Deli does not go 5. Now, this might be just as good, if not better, but this does give the 5 square to Stuff. And as we've seen in every line, Stuff really needs to get the 5 square to have a chance. Now, does he have it here? Well, that Vincent card kind of ruins everything. And here we can see that, for instance, if Braska in 5, Vincent in 6, now, even if this wasn't comboed back, it would still win, but Titus in 8 gets comboed hard. Okay. Yeah, this doesn't look salvageable either, because it's pretty hard to go anywhere. Where is a move? Where is a move? Braska 6? No. 5A7, 5 and 5 just kills that. If you go anything in 8, then Deli can play 5A7, 5 and 5, and it's just over. If you go in 6, Deli can play in 5. You have no ups, and Vincent sweeps Braska. If you go in 5, you get comboed to Oblivion. So 9, you have to start checking 9. And 9 probably similarly has a quite easy retort. It's like, what even are you putting there? Let's say Titus 9. Probably 5A7, 5-8 does it. Probably a lot of things do it, but 5A7, 5-8 makes it 6-4, and Vincent is still doing so much work. Yeah, I think this works. And this works much cleaner than the path I came up with. Mine relied on some combos working. I'm curious where the mistake was. Right, I'm getting a phone call. We're gonna ignore. And we're gonna go check Monsieur Solver. I'm curious. And sorry about the noise. I'm assuming this is spam, though it is a local call, so maybe it isn't. Alright. 4A59, 6A76, 4A78, 5A75, 197A for our first turn player. And our second turn player, 3-5 is Braska. That's the card currently picked up. Yeah. Nicely won by Deli. He's so good. I have a voicemail. That's exciting. Alright. So 4859 and 1, 8478 and 4. Delial is just winning here. Alright, this is just a losing move. Was there a difference between 6A76, Kuja, and 5A75? There was. Kuja wins, 5A75 doesn't. Deli's so good. Alright, well done to Deli. Everything is winning here. My best try was Titus in 6 after 2, and 6 loses to 7. So I feel good about that. I think that's probably as complex as you can make it. But it seems like just hopeless there. After 7, there's many moves that win. Deli went X-Death in 3, and that wins. And I wanted X-Death in 5, which also wins. And I did calculate the tricky line right. The Titus in 9 line, oh, there's a win in 6. I missed that. But Vincent in 8, 2-9A6 and 6, 5A7, 5 and 3, fun 9-1 win. Alright, so glad I got that line right. Titus in 6 did not hold. There was not a hold there. And really the question is how to meet Deli's starter on move 1, which was a really powerful starter for a hand that just seemed like it had basically 4 of the same card. That usually does not make for much pressure. My favorite move was A4, 7, 8, and 8. I think that was the only move I was at all happy with. And that is the only move with A4, 7, 8 that holds a tie. Alright, it has now found 3 ties. 5A, 3, 9, and 2 tied against the starter, so this is move 2 of the game after 4A, 5, 9, and 1. 5A, 3, 9, and 2 is just very deranged to me. 5A, 3, 9, and 8, okay, you make it an up-down game, you get rid of a side-to-side card. It doesn't play well with the rest of your hand, very weird move, but I can see why that would work. Braska in 2 ties? That's so weird. Interestingly, the card with the most ties, and there are very few ties here, it's going to come out with under 10 ties total out of 40 moves, is Titus. And that's interesting. Oh, it came out with 12 ties. That's still, I mean, very bad starting situation. Really good starter by Deli. Interestingly, Braska in 4 tied and Luca in 4 didn't. I guess we saw that Braska's 9 got punished by a lot of stuff. This is just a really tricky game to try to defend. Just to list other tying moves so that if someone is, because it finished, and if someone is interested in justifying them. Titus 5 apparently tied. That seems very weird, but maybe Akiyama could find it. Titus 8, again, 8 perhaps the key square here. Titus 3, that's weird. Titus 6, also weird to me, at least. 29A62 did hold, looked real dangerous. 29A68, 29A63 actually held. So I thought 29A6 and 2 and 3 was bad. But apparently it was better than most other options. I assume those ties are just very barely making it. But I think the real big takeaway here was 8 was the key square. There are 12 ties in this position, and 4 of them are in 8 after the starter in 1. 4 of the 12 ties are in 8. So the key to holding this game, I think, was identifying the opponent's hand as shockingly dangerous, given that it was all side to side, but that you had to force the game out of side to side, and going in 8 is the only way to force that. And that's really hard to do. I think in general, the type of player that goes in 8 too often. You should go in 8, I think, very rarely, and this was one of those spots. One of my proudest games in the return was against Sakaya, and they played a starter in 7, and I played in 6 just to make the game side to side, and I couldn't find anything. And of the 40 possible moves, there were 3 ties. And I had a card that was completely safe, but I didn't think I could give it up because I thought it was too powerful, and I was right about that. And I played this move in 6, and it was one of maybe not even 3, maybe 2 non-losing moves. And I think that's one of the best moves I've made, and one of the best, like, understood what was required by the hand's positions. But I think this is just very difficult, and yeah, Deli played this so well. Perfect game by Deli, and also, like, note my move in 5-1 and was cute and tactical, but like Deli's move in 3-1 without having to do anything complicated. And that's the ideal, right? Like, if you play my move in 5 and you miscalculated, things go wrong. If you play Deli's move in 3 and you miscalculated, you probably still win, right? So, yeah, I think Deli played this game perfectly. And I get Stuff's move in 4, and I think it's interesting that Braska in 4 actually did tie, because Braska and Luca are pretty similar there. Again, face theory would approve of this kind of thing. Of you have a starter that is half strong to your hand, and you have no useful ways to set up against it. Solver did say 2-9 a6 and 3 or whatever some setup move was a tie, but like, what are we doing here? That move looks deranged. So I think there is reasonable theory that gets you to 4, and I think this was a really tough spot. Good game. I'm gonna pause, possibly end the video here, listen to my voicemail, and we'll see if we're coming back to another game. Alright, we learned about my jury duty, so that's something. And I think that is the only game we're gonna get, so I think a neat game. I really find when hands are so unbalanced like this, how to deal with it is really interesting. And I think Deli turned this hand into a complete powerhouse, and it was just so dominant side to side, right? And like, you might think, okay, the only card that could fight some of that side to side is Laguna, but Laguna really couldn't. Like, it just, you know, every situation where it might land, Vincent's 9 picks it off, or, X Death picks it off or something, right? Every card can take its 9 to the left, and its 8 to the right is only safe if it lands near the bottom, which is where Stuff put it. Yeah. I guess the one final question is, was there anything trickier than my move in 6 on move 4? We flip over to the solver for a sec. So my idea, what I thought the best defense was here, with the point that if they don't block 3, you're going to be able to land, they go somewhere, just playing a random move. You're going to be able to play this, and 2 is safe, right? And if they do block 3, because you have a combo on the card in 2, they have to block with an 8 to the right. Otherwise, Braska hits even harder. But here, this should at least tie. Yeah, this does tie. And the only tie in response is X Death and 8. So, like, that's actually promising. But the reason it doesn't work is because Deli can play 7. And now, presumably, if we go 3, which was our threat, I think they can just go either card in 5. No, specifically probably this card in 5. And they sweep the bottom. Is that right? Yeah. Tough. Yeah. And Deli's going to find 7 at a pretty high rate. Not a great defensive chance. Okay. Was there anything else hopeful? There's the idea of going in 3. Okay, this loses to 4 different moves. Probably not that promising. Titus any better, also loses to 4 moves. My move only lost to 2 moves. Stuff moves loses to 6 moves. I still think it was probably a better defense than 3. How about 5? Only 3 moves, but they're probably pretty obvious. 7, 9, but yeah, this is the most obvious move in the position, and it wins. So that's not actually a better chance. What else could there be, right? Yeah, so I think this was probably the best try, but it's a very bad position at this point. And fundamentally, this is just a really hard position to defend. So I guess I think if we return to this position for a moment and just look at where the ties are, and think about it in terms of, oh, I closed that. And we think about this in terms of when meeting a half strong starter like this. Like, let's try to generalize, because I think a really useful thing you can do is each game is specific and narrow, but you can kind of take when a certain type of move feels dangerous to me, what end up being the few moves that work. And I think the big takeaway is 4 of the 5 moves in 8 tie. So if you find 8, you notice the directions that are happening, and you find 8, I'm not saying those ties are easy to hold, but there are ways to tie there. So that's one. You can spot the directions. But we want as many tools as possible to not lose a game, right? If you're really aware of finding directional saves, that will save you sometimes, but it will not save you other times when there is no direction to take advantage of. So we keep looking for tools, and the more tools we understand, the better chance one of them will click in any given game. So where were the second most ties? Well, there are 2 ties in 2. And there is 1 tie in 4, I think. So, of our 12 total ties, a third of them are in 8. So, a third of them are kind of directional. And then another 3 of them are just get rid of that part of the board. Just get rid of the stuff around their starter. Either take it immediately, which incidentally is what stuff did, so like not a bad idea, or just go next to it, the strong side, saying, now I have a threat to attack it from the weak side, and you have to react to that. But either way, you're getting rid of those squares as quickly as possible. And maybe if we compare to the game, we can actually see the benefit of going in 2. It felt pretty illogical to me, but if we think about this position, we would rather go in 3 than 7. Because we have an easier time attacking 7 than we do 3, and our opponent has an easier time as well attacking 7 than they do 3. So we would much prefer to be playing in 3 than 7 here in general. The problem is 3 here is horrible, because as soon as they go 5, we lose 4 forever as well, right? So, actually, sorry, one sec, let's get the proper count. It just finished running it again. Tie in 2, tie in 2, tie in 2, tie in 4. Yeah, so a third of the moves were in 2 or 4 that tie, and 3 of them were in 2. And if we think about from the game, we think this move looks silly. This move looks silly, right? Just a very silly looking move to me. Say they go here. That looks very reasonable to me. I think our ties are in 3. Yeah. Now, or Titus. Either one of these in 3 works. And by analogy to the game, this can make some sense, right? We would much rather be defending 2 and 3 than we would 4 and 7. It's just easier to defend things higher up. Both of us have trouble going up. Now, this position does look terrible, right? How are we holding here? It's kind of useful we have Luca to create a threat in 8. And this is like an unpleasant position, but apparently we can block 6. And we do hold due to that threat of Luca in 8. Interesting. So one is, by analogy to the game, we can see that, like, if we're facing a starter like this, it might even be better not to play the capturing square, but to leave that one open, right? If we play the capture square, they kind of have to go 2. If we play the non-capture square, they still kind of have to go 4 because we threaten to capture. So we're causing the same kind of interactions either way, and the question is not kind of do we take it or do we not take it, it's where do we want our cards to be. And we would rather the cards that are already ours be in 2 and 3 rather than squares like 4 and 7, because 2 and 3 are harder for both players to attack, but especially for our opponent to attack. So a third of the moves that tie are going in 8 and saying I'm better up down than you are, you're all side to side. A third of the moves are going in 2 and 4, saying this is a problem and I just have to get rid of it. But it's interesting that 2 is the better move than 4, even with just ridiculous, like I'm never playing Laguna in 2. But but maybe we can make some sense of it that way, right? Maybe the threatened 4 is worth more, and we want our cards to be in those upper squares, not theirs. All right, where's the last 4 ties? We have 4 ties left. They are in. Oh, we've done 2, we've done 8, we've done 4, we've done 2. All right, there are 4 ties left. 2 of them are in 3. Now, 3 is the adjacent corner against their strong side, right? This is the side we can't take. Setting up against it always is appealing, but even if we can't set up against it, what we're basically doing is turning 2 from a bad square into a good square. Even if you don't set up to be able to take from 2, you do set up if you go something in 3, right? If they go somewhere random, like you do set up to be able to go in 2, right? You create a threat for yourself in 2, even if it doesn't have the capture. So often we play these adjacent corners to set up 2, but you can also play the adjacent corner to say 2 is a bad square for me, right? We know 2 is a terrible square for us. And that's part of the reason why going in 2 actually is better here than going in 4 in general, is because we're getting rid of a bad square. But if we go in 3, even though we don't give ourselves a capture in 2, we do turn a bad square into a good square. So in fact, maybe I've separated it into the directional moves in 8, the next 2 moves in 2 and 4, and then the other moves. But maybe actually we should better understand 2 and 3 is connected. They often are very similar moves. They usually both aim for an L, and they usually aim for an L where you control cards in somewhat similar places. Sometimes that's not true. But perhaps better understood as they are both ways of getting rid of the 2 square. If you go in 3, you are either causing your opponent to go in 2, or you are creating a use in 2 for yourself, even if you don't set up when you have a high number facing down. If you go in 2, you obviously get rid of the 2 square. They are both ways to get rid of the worst square. And so we might say, even though the cards it's suggesting to put in 3 are very strange to me, like, right, this does not look appealing to me, you know? And it turns out, yeah, there's only a couple ties here, but they're 4 and 5. They're the moves you check. Even if it looks unappealing, getting rid of 2, 5 of the tying moves, 2 and 3 and 3 and 2, are moves that get rid of the 2 square. So we might now say the keys to this position were either to make the game up down or to get rid of the 2 square. Man, this has gone, I think, so educational. Both, like, for me as well. I'm not, like, these are not, I mean, some of these are moves I identified as interesting or possible to check, but I didn't like them, except for 8. And I also, but I think kind of when you have the answer key, what it gives you is not that's the answer. What it gives you is how can I draw tools from this that help my play? And that's why I'm really trying to explain them, because I think this was a really interesting, complex position that's very difficult to deal with. And it's the kind of position that if you can deal with it, if you can survive this, you're going to be able to survive a whole lot, right? So if we master the art of surviving here, we are great triple triad players, right? Just like kind of automatically, how could we not be? Now, sure, not all positional understandings apply to other positions, but I feel like if we get this one, this is the kind of really tough position that if we understand our tools right, that's so valuable. So, okay, what are the last moves we have left? We have moves in 2 and 3, which I like how I've explained. We have a move in 4. I don't really feel I've explained that one well. We're gonna move off that one. We have a move in 8, and we have a bunch of moves in 8, and we have 2 singleton moves as well, which are specifically Titus in 5 and Titus in 6. Titus in 5 was the only move in 5 that sets up against 1. Now, I think I said at some point there are no moves in 5 that set up against 1. So I completely missed the possibility of this move, I think. I think I was just oblivious to it. But, okay, so the only move in 5 that gives us a way to attack 1 does in fact tie. Worth knowing, right? Yeah, I think I just missed this. I mean, you can roll the tape. I can't currently. I'd have to end the video and come back, so I can't. But I think I just missed this completely. But okay, this is the kind of move. It makes sense. This is one of the better options. Now, is this a particularly good setup in 5? No. Like, we don't have good play in 4. Anything they play in 2 is safe. Anything they play in 4 is a little tricky for us to interact with. Um, a lot of our cards there are covered. They have same walls in 6, right? This is not a great version of a 5 setup. So I assume if Deli makes a good move here, which he would have, this is a very dangerous position still. But all of these lines are going to lead to dangerous positions because our starting position is horrible, right? But worth noting, okay, 5 that sets up does hold. Now, I think the mystery move, the real mystery move, is why does Titus in 6 tie? Like, I don't know why we'd want the game side to side. The big lesson of this position, the first big lesson was play 8, make it up down. The second big lesson was 2 is a dead square for us, get rid of 2. There are 2 ways to do so. You play in 2 or you play in 3. Or you set up in 5, right? All those moves are about 2. Going in 3 is about 2, whether or not you set up there. Going 5 is about 2, because you set up there. Going 2 is about 2, you've got rid of that square. So the key to this position was up, down, or get rid of 2. What does 6 do? 6 makes the game side to side. That seems actively terrible. It gets rid of one of our threats in 4, and we don't have that many threats in 4. It's nice to have some options there. Now, that's probably not a great option, but it's still nice to have options. It gives up safety in 3. It gives up safety in 9. It makes it side to side. I hate this move. I am kind of shocked it's a tie. If you can explain why this move. The thing about explanations, right, is you can't just say, this works because we actually do want side to side or something like that. Because that doesn't explain why this move in 6 ties, but all the other cards in 6 lose. Right? The reason I can say 8 tells you want the game to be up down is because 4 of the 5 cards in 8 tie, right? So it's not about some specific interaction it sets up. It is about making it up down because almost every card there works. But this move does not make sense to me. And that's okay, right? We don't need to have all the tools, and I'm pretty certain this move is never going to be better than options in 8 in this kind of setup. So, like, it's okay that this isn't explained, but that's a very curious move to me. Why is this in 6 a tie? No idea. Main lessons. Get rid of our worst square in 2, or make the game up down in 8. And, yeah, we'll end it there. This ended up being really interesting, I think. Hopefully it was for you, dear viewer, as well.